Welcome to our Tide Sports Recruiting Special segment with our very own recruiting specialist, Scout.com's Andrew Bone. How are you doing, man?
Man, doing great.
Well, thanks for coming in and talking some shop with us, as usual.
Definitely.
A lot of stuff has been out there. I recall SEC Media Days, a couple big announcements for Alabama. And why don't we talk about those first, and then we'll move on to a couple names that could be on the Alabama commit list or not. And then maybe some other names that are out there and thrown around. So let's first talk about Corey Grant.
Yeah, it was a big pickup for Alabama. One of the top in-state players. Had decided between Alabama, Auburn, and Florida. Had really ended up coming down, I believe, between Alabama and Auburn, and started receiving a lot of pressure living in Opelika to go over to Auburn, but Alabama ended up getting his commitment, and he's a special player, can play in the slot, can play running back, can play special teams. I think that Alabama's probably going to spread him out a little bit, create some open space for him, and also try to get him involved in punt and kickoff return. But he's a very fast player, ran 10.56 in the 100 meters this past year, won the 100 meters the last 2 years in the Class 6A state championship, and also the 200 meters, so he's a very fast player. He's a player that I really like a lot. He's got great vision, quickness, speed. He's got everything that Alabama's been really trying to search for, try to get. And they've missed out on a couple of those guys in the last two recruiting classes, but finally got their guy this year in Corey Grant.
I did notice on the 7-on-7 video that you had there, they had him playing a lot in that slot and a lot in the receiver role. He made a great catch over the middle, I saw on one, and then some great speed to the outside.
That's right. He's very tough to defend. I mean, if he's lined up in that slot, I mean, he's a tough matchup for just about anybody, and even if they spread him out to as a wideout, I mean, he's going to be a tough matchup. I mean, he's just got so much speed and can really burn.
And another big sign for Alabama, and it was I believe down to Alabama and Oklahoma, was another big tight end. I saw Colin Peak over at the media days, and that boy's tall as well. So they're looking at the 6'7.5". Really,
right.
Brian Vogler. Tight end. So talk about
tight end position was a key position for Alabama in this recruiting class, and Brian Vogler was a guy that they had targeted early on, had made an early offer to, probably about 8-9 months ago when they offered him. And he's a very athletic tight end. Also he's a star on the basketball court. Could potentially play basketball at the next level, but I think he's going to mainly just stick to football. And big guy, 6'7.5", like you said, about 250 pounds, can catch the ball, can run, and really a big pickup for Alabama.
So a couple other big names that are out there that I'd like for you to touch on, get your insight. A 4-star safety, Keenan Allen, who's still out there, who, from Alabama's perspective, the #1 safety on their board still.
Well, yeah, definitely one of the top safety overall on Alabama's recruiting board. Probably one of the overall top guys on their recruiting board right now that they're still going after. Now, Keenan's he's a player that could play either wide receiver or safety in college. We've got him rated as a safety right now, and that's what we think he'll probably play. But he's also an excellent receiver, so don't be surprised if he ends up playing receiver in college. But he's been favoring Alabama for quite a while. I remember talking to him back in. It's probably been back in November when he told me that he was going to commit to Alabama before signing day, but then held off from his commitment a little bit and visited some schools like Clemson and Cal and in North Carolina, but still says that Alabama's still the leader. I think he's going to make a decision maybe within the next month or so. I still think it's going to be Alabama, and right now it's Alabama and Cal as the top two schools, but Alabama's the leader, and I think they're going to end up getting them.
What about this monster? The #1 ranked middle linebacker on Scout.com, a guy by the name of Jeff Luke, hailing out of Treasure Coast High School in Point St. Lucie, Florida. I know Alabama's in that mix. Got a lot of competition in that state. What are your thoughts on this guy?
Hey, he's a scary dude. I'll tell you that much. I've seen him personally, met with him, talked to him before, and he's a very intimidating football player, and he's definitely a guy that's very highly coveted. Like we said, #1 middle linebacker in the country, #1 linebacker in the country, and it's always kind of been the Florida schools that were always kind of the leaders. But he made a visit to Alabama a couple of weeks ago for the camp. really loved it up in Tuscaloosa. Had really hit it off with Coach Saban and Coach Willis, and said that he's probably going to come back during the season and may come back for an official visit. But I definitely think after that visit that Alabama's going to be in the mix now.
Really? I think fans would like to hear that, huh?
I think so.
It's a very it's going to be fun watching that linebacking core this season on the University of Alabama. And Saban's that linebacker secondary kind of guy.
Well, I spoke to C.J. Mosley the other day. He's the top uncommitted prospect in the state right now from Theodore High School, the top linebackers in the country. And he was telling me he came in for practice this past weekend and was watching the linebacker core. And I said, well, what'd you think about it? He said, well, that's going to be a force to be reckoned with for a long time in the SEC.
Sure.
He said he was just blown away with the talent that Alabama has right now at linebacker.
So let's talk now. We've talked about the 2010 class, but you mentioned 2011, a couple guys that are verbal commits as of now. So let's discuss some of those names and what they're looking at.
That's right. Alabama's already picked up 2 verbal commitments for the 2011 class, both in-state guys, and both are probably going to be number 1 and number 2 player in the state for next year. The first commitment was from Marvin Shin, a wide receiver out of Viger High School, same high school that Burton Scott played for. He's one of the top. He's going to be one of the top wide receiver prospects in the country. A lot of people are trying to give some early comparisons to Julio Jones, but he's not quite at the level of Julio just yet. But he's a real good talent, about 6'2", close to 6'3", about 185 pounds, can really run, can catch the ball well, and just very athletic. And also Brent Callaway, a outside linebacker, running back from Russellville High School. 6'3", about 15 pounds. Told me he'd like to get up to 225 pounds before the season started. And he's just another excellent athlete, a guy that Alabama really wants at outside linebacker in the future. And both of those guys are solid commitments to Alabama already. So I'm sure they're extremely excited. And the state of Alabama is going to have some real good talent for next year's class.
So that's 2011. I was on BamaMag.com today, just poking around, of course, and you guys already have up the 2012, an intro by one of your colleagues, Chad Simmons, on Jafar Mann, defensive tackle out of Stone Mountain, Georgia, sophomore, 6'3", 255-pound defensive end. Of course, just sneak peeking in. I know you haven't had a chance to see him, but is there anyone out there, 2012-wise, that you have seen, you have had some time with, and that could be on that radar?
Hey, it's crazy how recruiting's gotten over the last few years. I mean, it seems like every year it gets bigger and bigger, and prospects get offered earlier and earlier. And there's going to be definitely some big talent. I mean, there's a kid up at Bob Jones High School in Madison, Alabama, right now, named Reggie Ragland. He's an outside linebacker. That's going to be a 2012 kid. That's going to be a pretty big time recruit when it's all said and done. And then I know that Prattville High School's got some big defensive ends that are already getting a lot of looks from the SEC. So there's definitely, we're probably going to see kids that are going to be going into the 9th grade that are going to start getting recruited by schools all over the country. So it's getting bigger and bigger every year. So we're definitely going to see more and more underclassmen that are going to be on that radar screen.
All right, Andrew, I think that's great for this week. Join us each week for the Tide Sports Recruiting Report with our own, I wouldn't call our own, Scout.com, but I'm going to call you my own. Is that cool?
That's right.
My own Andrew
That's
Bone.
fine.
All right, thanks for coming in, man.
Thank you.